All right, guys. Sorry, I just made a video. It was like 20 minutes long. And apparently, my phone does not like taking 20-minute long videos. Which I was also going to make this video. Let my wife, proof watch it before I posted it on social media. Um, so I've been kind of quiet the last couple of days with everything that's going on, and seen a lot of people post a lot of different stuff. And instead of me going on a rant on commenting, I feel like messaging loses a lot of context, and a lot of interpersonal people don't see that, right? Um, so I figured I need to probably make a video about this to try to explain things a little bit, or another perspective at least, right? Um, so I this morning saw a friend post something on Facebook, kind of got me worked up. Then I saw somebody else post something on Facebook, kind of got me worked up too. And then I've obviously been talking to a lot of people in current events with the last couple of days. Um, so I kind of want to make a video to, or to do a live video to explain things. Which, if you're not going to watch this and then it's entirely, I would just not watch it because it might certain portions of it might be out of context. So what got me worked up this morning was somebody posted about firearms regulations that they're trying to go after. The fact that Whitmer commented about that, and so on and so forth. When the shooting went down at MSU, I was actually laying in bed getting ready to post on social media about a firearms training related class that I had coming up. Saw the shooting that was going on, switched on the radio or my phone, started listening to all that until about 12:30 at night. Which I got to say, what I do for a living, my expertise, what I used to do for a living, not being on an apartment for the last 2-3 years, not being able to go lend my expertise to that was pretty difficult for me to sit there and listen to it. Which that's a whole nother conversation. So the other caveat to that was listening to that, I figured, I probably shouldn't post on social media about it right now, about a class. Obviously, it might be a little tone deaf. Um, so probably should hold back on that. And same thing the next day, which was difficult the next day because then I saw Whitmer immediately talking about this is American only problem. And not only is this American only problem, um, we could make change, we could make differences, which she's obviously talking about more firearms regulations, right? Um, it's crazy because a lot of my friends that are voted for Biden lean towards the left, right? Or a lot of them are even saying they're like, but there's firearm laws now that aren't being enforced, like that's not going to do any good, right? Um, which is true, right? The other post that I saw was the rock at MSU was painted immediately after the incident, saying, "When is enough enough?" We obviously have students that are going through a lot of stuff and seeing a lot of different stuff. Um, so it's interesting to see that because can't imagine what they're going through, right? So we need to take that into consideration. But then you also have to take into consideration the other half of the students that are like, I would like to be able to protect myself, right? How do we know what they're going through? We don't, right? So the rock got repainted today, and it was talking about when are we going to let students carry guns. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I think every student should be able to carry a gun. I don't think that having a cop in every school and all this other stuff is the answer. I don't know, right? I'm not. I had breakfast the other day with a friend, and he asked me the solution, and I said I'm not quite sure, right? Um, all I know is we got to change something, and what we're doing is not working, and more laws is not going to be the answer, right? We have laws in place now, and look what happened in 2019. The shooter at MSU walked from a felony firearms. That's what those laws there are for, right? Um, it's crazy to think that back then, felony firearms, he should never be able to own a firearm. He should have been spent time in prison and all this other stuff. And we have a very liberal prosecutor that lets him walk on it. And then since then, he shoots his gun in his backyard. Police department's been out there multiple times. His mom dies. Parents or family is saying that he's been going through a rough time, and then he's needing. They're trying to get him help and all this other stuff. And it's like, and don't get me wrong, he's evil, right? It's what happened to him. Somebody else should have done for him, right? But evil's evil, but at the same time, like we have things in place that aren't working, and people are falling through cracks, and we need to reinforce that instead of trying to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. One So three things that I tell people for CPL class. One, CPL class is bullshit. You shouldn't have to take the class to do that. Blah blah blah. Second thing, when it comes to CPL class, Second Amendment is for everybody, right? You ask my conservative friends that are all my friends that shoot and we hang out all the time. They call me liberal because I believe it. I got vaccinated and I wear skinny jeans, right? So I'm liberal for that. But then you look at the liberal left that I know, and they're like, "What do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "I teach people how to shoot guns," and they're like, "Oh, oh, right." So I'm stuck in the middle, right? Every CPL class, I tell everybody, Second Amendment. My political beliefs is I think gay interracial couples should be able to protect themselves or protect their marijuana plants with AR-15s. That means I don't care who you are, where you're from, your religion, your sexual preferences. When you start a family, kids, people have this visceral urge to be able to protect themselves. That's what it's about, right? It's for the kids that are in class right now that are like, hey, they're at MSU and they're like, I wish we could carry guns or something like that. Or if I believe correctly, on MSU campus, students aren't even allowed to carry pepper spray, right? Um, and I'm not saying that that's the answer, right? One of the students that were shot, I found out that he's a firearms enthusiast and he shoots trap and he shoots all the time. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to stop an active shooter, but I'd like to think that maybe he at least have the option to, right? We don't say fire extinguishers don't work, and we're just going to rely on the fire department. Like we put other things in place where people can potentially have hopefully have some form of impact or early response to stuff. But CPL class, right? I tell people like the guns, when you're anti-gun and you voted for Biden and then your family members killed in your front yard and you're like, I feel this urge to be able to protect myself. It's like that's what the Second Amendment's about. Right? People are scared right now, and that's what I do for a living is I try to empower them so that they don't feel afraid and they feel the ability to protect themselves or family, right? I've had moms in class that say, if somebody was raping me, I don't think I could shoot and kill him. But if they were breaking in and going after my kids, yeah, I'd shoot them in the face. And you're like, okay, who am I to say, right, what you think or can't do? That's what it comes down to is education. Um, I see a lot of posts right now on social media about they were talking about gun reform, and 85% of America wants gun reform. If 85% of America wanted gun reform, they would have done it by now. It's the quiet majority that are like, hey, just because I don't wear a Trump hat doesn't mean that I don't want my guns and that I don't want to be able to carry my guns, right? Um, so it's we're kind of stuck, not stuck, but there's a lot of educational components that go into that. I think a lot of the issue is, and I already said I already made this video, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm covering the stuff but not talking about it four times. um, FBI did a study back after the Las Vegas shooting, I believe, to see if it's a gun issue or if it's a mental health issue. And they actually didn't find a correlation between any of them. A lot of the people that are doing this are legally getting firearms, and a lot of people that are doing it are not your 20-year schizophrenic people that have issues, right? It's your people that are having large life events without help. Um, massive gambling addictions, divorce, cheating, deaths in the family, stuff like that, right? Like the MSU shooter, they were talking about his mom died and he's been evil ever since, right? I've had a patient years ago that was going through divorce, ends up saying that he's suicidal, wanted to kill himself, whatever it may be. Went to Sparrow Hospital. Sparrow sent him to community mental health for a 72-hour psych hold and evaluation. They remove your rights and they evaluate you, right? He ends up talking the people into saying, "Hey, I'm not suicidal, and I can go home." And then they're going to continue outpatient type thing. And he leaves and actually goes down to a local gun store and buys a gun, and there's no communication between the two. You're like, pardon my language, but how the fuck does that happen? How can somebody go down there and buy a gun and not have any issue, but then your legal citizen goes down and tries to buy a gun and they're like, yeah, your name got flagged for some reason. It's going to take 3 days before you can come back and get a gun, or we got to run it because just for whatever reason, right? Again, I've got friends that are resource officers. Putting a cop in every school is not necessarily going to solve all the problems. Locking all the doors aren't going to solve all the problems necessarily, right? But it's not going to hurt, right? Like I grew up with cops in my school, and it was just kind of the way it was, in my opinion. Um, so again, I'm not saying that that's going to solve all the problems, but like you've got a study hall with kids that are studying, and stuff's going on, and like there's no staff, there's nobody there doing, no security, no locked doors. Like you take a CPL class with me, any of my students are going to tell me when I tell you don't carry a gun in the CPL class or don't bring them inside, I lock the doors and I provide security because you're unarmed, right? Like we've got to have something in place, or start looking at stuff. The vast majority of people that, like I say, that's one of the reasons I want to post this, because I see people saying things like, firearms reform. For every person that you post, every person that I know that says that, 10 of your family and friends that are literally just the opposite direction. They're like, hey, I'm not going to put a hat on that says Second Amendment NRA, but I bet I got my guns. I guarantee I protect my family if and when be, right? That's kind of like when they talk about kids owning guns. I'm like, in my opinion, if you're 18 years old and you can go to college and you can have kids and you can get an apartment and you can have a family, like, why shouldn't they be able to protect their family, right? Like, there's got to be something said to that. We all know, like, even most of the people I've talked to in the last 2 days that voted for Biden, they're like, more gun laws. I mean, look, we've got laws now, and none of it's getting taken care of. You're like, how are more laws going to change anything, right? That's kind of where. So now it leads us down into this next conversation that I want to talk about. So, like, a lot of people are uneducated about some of this stuff. Like, I had a family member that says, well, I don't think 18-year-old kids should be able to own AR-15s. You're like, well, what do you mean? Well, 18-year-olds can't own guns. Why should they be able to own an AR-15? You're like, you can own guns at 18. Like, people are uneducated when it comes to firearms ownership. I have people you see on social media talking about stuff all the time, family members and friends saying we need to change this, but they don't have a clue what they're talking about. Like, I do this for a living, and I try not being that gun nut that's talking on social media, but I'm trying to have more of a realistic conversation so that we can better ourselves as a community, right? That's one of the things I say in CPL class. If you're taking my CPL class, I tell people in class, you want to know who's going to ruin firearm ownerships for firearm owners in America? And half the students are like, liberals, gun laws. And you're like, nope, you, the firearm owners, us as a community. We have this issue that we grew up with guns all over the house, just laid out. And they're like, I grew up with guns around the house. You're like, okay, you can't do that anymore, right? Like, we need to lock up our guns so their kids can't get a hold of stuff. Like, I don't do my career just to be all flashy and then want to have somebody have an accident that I'm responsible for down the road. Like, I've taught thousands of people. It's like Carol Simon saying, well, there's racial disparities in Lansing, and we're not going to press felony firearm charges for the last couple of years. Granted, there is racial disparities in Lansing, that is, but at the same time, not pressing felony firearms, how do you think she feels right now? That was a decision she made years ago that has a massive consequence. How would I feel as a firearms instructor telling you, just load your guns, leave them out on the counter? This is America. This is the way we do things. No, you need to lock up your guns. Go down to the gun store, buy a $20, $30 safe. Go on Amazon, buy a $60 biometric safe. That's what I have. Sits in my the cereal cabinet where my kids are getting cereal. They can't access it. I go beep, and I have a gun loaded, ready to protect my family and friends. That's what it's about, right? Being able to protect yourself. And that's another reason I'm making one of these videos, is because I see a lot of people that are commenting, saying a lot of different stuff, that are uneducated. So what the one of the purposes I wanted to make this video was, if you're not quite sure, or you have anger, or you're upset about what's going on, which everybody is, as you should be, and you want to know more, right? Take my class for free. Take a CPL class with me for free. Obviously, if you want to stay and you want to shoot and you want to get your certificate and get certified, you have to pay for it. But if you want to show up to my class and sit through my lecture, sit through the legal portion, sit through all the stuff that we're teaching new gun owners, why would I charge you? Jump in class for free. Come sit through it, and you can be like, awesome, thanks, man, I appreciate it. I'll chat with you. I've had people show up in class, take a class, and at the end of class say, I don't need a certificate. I don't feel comfortable. Like, awesome. You took that upon yourself, right? So if you want to take any of my CPL classes, I do once a month at Not Just Guns. Hit me up, say, hey, can I jump in class for free? I don't know if I want to shoot. Jump in. Awesome. You might want to come back and shoot another day, or you say, I do want to stay and shoot. We can make that work, but I won't charge you if you just want to sit through the lecture and see the content and the education and stuff that we're putting out, trying to make impactful change in people's lives, right? Again, I don't have the answers to all these problems. I see a lot of people posting different things. I'm trying to be tactful, and I'm trying to not be tone deaf to the situation. It's a lot of people think that, things look a certain way. Like, I've spent my life and career trying to better people and protect people from this, right? That's what my business is made off of. Finest Hour is from me on my first fire department call back when I was 19, 20 years old. fatal car accident and I didn't have any medical training. I sat there and watched a kid die and I couldn't help anybody, right? It's that horrible gut feeling being unprepared. So that's what I'm just like, all right, I'm going to start getting medical training, right? Then I get into firearms training and protecting myself and then teaching other people to protect themselves and having a meaningful impact, right? Banning guns is not the story. It's not, and even if we ban guns, it's not, we're not going to get rid of guns. There's millions of guns in America. I was talking to a guy just an hour before making this video that spent time in Liverpool, right? And he's like, "What's the gun issue over here?" And they're like, "Hey, the low level criminals that that just do like B&Es and stuff and breaking in. Sure, they can't afford a gun, but like all the other higher end criminals, they have guns. They got full auto machine guns, you name it. Like they don't care, right? But then you're removing the firearm from the American citizens or the citizens, the law abiding citizens, right? Um, I'm all for having conversations and talking and education. And that's where a lot of people think I come off kind of liberal when it comes to this but at the same time, Second Amendment's non-negotiable. It's not, right? Um, it's like if you want me to help teach firearm safety, I mean, I'll donate locks. You name it. That's what it's all about, right? Um, Empowering people to be able to protect themselves and their family. That's for every student that's posting and painting the rock saying we want firearms reform. The other half of the students might say, hey, we want to be able to protect ourselves. Same thing, like people are like, well, what you imagine the parents that are going through this stuff. And you're like, I can't imagine what they're going through. But for you to say that they're going to immediately want to ban firearms, how do you know half those parents aren't like, I wish that there would have been armed security in there and got mad about that, right? Um, who knows? It's like I always envision. Everybody asks me, and I'm like, I can't imagine if there's a shooting at my kid's school and I lost one of my kids, right? Especially what I do for a living. And I'm like, I can't imagine that. Like, I was like, maybe I might sell all my guns and completely flip and start going after firearms. But then I'm like, no, I've been around long enough and seen enough evil that I've been on multiple patients. I've been on multiple shootings. You name it. Like evil in this world exists, and if we ban the guns, it doesn't matter because then they're going to start using vehicles or fire or all these other platforms that they have for enacting massive, massive, massive violence. Right. Um, when your government's telling you that you need to be banning firearms, but we don't know where these balloons are coming from, and they're telling you that law enforcement's not responsible for protecting you. I'm like, I'm not trying to go down the conspiracy theorist side of stuff, but like, if you feel the urge to be able to protect your family and do something, you should be able to, right? That's what makes America great. So I wanted to make this video. You guys have any questions, you can go crazy in the comments. If you don't want to go crazy in the comments and you want to message me privately, talk about something, call me. I'm all ears. I'm trying to navigate this just like you guys are, and I'm trying to be as helpful as possible. Again, if you're not sure about stuff and you're like, hey, I want to go sit in Justin's class and see what he's putting out, I typically change a lot of minds, right? I make a living doing this by making a big impact and being helpful. People wouldn't pay me out of pocket if I treated them like shit and put out bad content. So, um, yeah, thanks, guys. Hit me up. Be safe and spend time with your family. See ya.